Las Vegas just hit 111 degrees, the hottest day of the entire year. And meteorologists are warning that the moment this heat finally breaks is not the relief people think it is. What triggers next could be just as dangerous as the heat itself, and it is already building in the mountains right outside the city. For weeks now, southern Nevada has been trapped under a brutal, repeating cycle of extreme heat that has already broken multiple daily records this season. In early July, forecasters warned temperatures would climb well above normal, pushing past 110 degrees by midweek. That warning proved accurate almost immediately. Harry, Reed International Airport hit 111 degrees, officially making it the hottest day recorded in Las Vegas so far this year. The normal high for this time of year sits around 105. This heat wave blew straight past that, running 5 to 10 degrees above what is typical, even for a city known for scorching summers. Clark County activated cooling stations across the valley in response, opening up libraries, parks, and county facilities as relief points for anyone without reliable air conditioning. The National Weather Service issued an extreme heat warning covering the entire region, warning of dangerously hot conditions with afternoon temperatures climbing into the 108 to 114 degree range, a level of sustained heat that pushes the human body toward its physical limits within just a few hours of exposure. In the Colorado River Valley, temperatures were forecast to top 115. In Death Valley, forecasters warned of highs reaching 120. Behind all of this sits a strong high-pressure system parked directly over the southwest, according to meteorologists at the National Weather Service office in Las Vegas. That high pressure is functioning exactly like a heat dome, trapping hot, sinking air over the region and preventing any real relief from moving in. As long as that system holds its position, the heat simply keeps building day after day with little to interrupt it. But high-pressure systems like this one do not last forever, and this is where the real concern for Las Vegas begins. Southern Nevada sits in the middle of monsoon season, a stretch of the year when moisture pushes north out of Mexico and the Gulf of California, feeding thunderstorms across the desert southwest. For weeks, that monsoon moisture has been drifting in and out of the region, sometimes fizzling before it can produce much rain, other times bubbling up into storms over higher terrain east of the valley. Meteorologists have repeatedly pointed to this pattern as the wild card sitting right alongside the extreme heat. When the high-pressure ridge finally weakens or shifts even slightly, that monsoon moisture gets a clear path to surge into the valley, and it tends to arrive fast. This is not a hypothetical risk. It has already happened multiple times this summer. In mid-July, forecasters tracked a 50% chance of thunderstorms rolling into the valley over a single weekend, with a tropical depression forming off the coast of Mexico, adding extra uncertainty to how much moisture might reach southern Nevada. Around the same time, a sudden wall of blowing dust, what meteorologists call a dust event, swept through Henderson and parts of East Las Vegas as outflow winds raced ahead of approaching storms. Visibility dropped fast. Drivers on open stretches of highway were caught off guard by gusty, erratic winds kicking up dust and sand with almost no warning. That combination, extreme heat, followed by sudden outflow winds and flash flood risk, is exactly why local emergency crews have been actively preparing for what comes after the heat, not just the heat itself. Henderson firefighters have been training specifically for swift water rescues this summer, a clear signal from people on the ground that flash flooding, not just high temperatures, is a serious concern once this pattern shifts. Officials have been blunt about it, warning residents directly not to underestimate moving water, even in a desert city famous for going months without meaningful rainfall. This is the part scientists say catches people off guard almost every single year. In a place like Las Vegas, people are conditioned to think of danger purely in terms of heat. Stay hydrated. Avoid the sun during peak afternoon hours. Check on elderly. Neighbors. Those warnings are accurate and important, but they only cover half of the actual risk. The other half arrives suddenly, often within minutes, when monsoon storms finally break through after days of buildup. Desert terrain does not absorb heavy rain well. Hard, sun-baked ground sheds water almost immediately, sending it rushing into washes, underpasses, and low-lying roads that can go from completely dry to dangerously flooded in a remarkably short amount of time. Las Vegas has a well-documented history with this exact kind of sudden reversal. Flash floods have repeatedly caught residents and tourists off guard, sometimes turning parts of the Strip corridor and nearby washes into fast-moving channels of water within a matter of minutes. Storm drains built to handle typical desert rainfall can be overwhelmed almost instantly when a monsoon cell dumps an inch or more of rain in a short burst, something that happens with surprising regularity once the summer heat pattern finally shifts. Emergency officials point back to these past events, specifically when explaining why they take the collapse phase of a heat wave just as seriously as the heat itself. Meteorologists explain why this collapse pattern tends to be so abrupt in desert regions specifically. The same high-pressure system responsible for trapping extreme heat also blocks storms from developing normally. Moisture backs up around the edges of that ridge for days, sometimes weeks, without finding an opening. When the ridge finally weakens, whether from a shift in the jet stream or an approaching tropical system out in the Pacific, all of that built-up moisture can surge in at once instead of arriving gradually. That is why monsoon storms in the desert Southwest often feel like they appear out of nowhere, producing intense rainfall rates, sudden lightning, and powerful outflow winds within a very short window of time. There is also a practical, everyday impact that tends to get overlooked amid the bigger weather headlines. Outflow winds and sudden storms have repeatedly disrupted operations at Harry Reid International Airport, forcing airlines to adjust departure times when gusty winds move across the airfield with little advance notice. Travelers heading through Las Vegas during this stretch of the summer are encouraged to check live airport updates and build extra time into their plans, since a clear sky over the terminal does not guarantee calm conditions by the time a flight is ready to depart. Highway travel carries similar risk, with sudden reduced visibility and heavy rain, making stretches of Interstate 15 and rural desert roads considerably more hazardous during these transition periods than they appear at first glance. This year, that risk is getting extra attention because of a developing El Niño pattern taking shape across the Pacific. Forecasters have specifically flagged El Niño as a factor that could boost monsoon activity across the flash flood risks compared to a typical year. A stronger monsoon season means more moisture available to fuel storms once the current heat dome finally breaks down, which increases the odds that the eventual collapse produces more intense flooding and stronger outflow winds than usual. This entire pattern is also unfolding against a broader backdrop of extreme weather playing out across the country at the same time. While Las Vegas has been baking under its own heat dome, other parts of the United States have dealt with heavy wildfire smoke drifting across the Midwest and Northeast, forcing evacuations in remote wilderness areas hundreds of miles away. It is a reminder that the high-pressure ridge sitting over the Southwest is just one piece of a much larger, more volatile weather pattern currently, stretching across North America, one that keeps producing extremes in multiple directions at once. As of the most recent forecasts, storm chances over southern Nevada were fading heading into the middle of the week, with dangerous heat expected to rebuild and hold through the following Monday. That pattern, monsoon moisture briefly interrupting the heat before high pressure reasserts itself, has repeated itself several times already this summer. Each time it happens, it resets the clock on how much energy and moisture builds up before the next real break in the pattern. So what should residents and visitors actually watch for as this cycle continues to play out? Meteorologists say the clearest early warning sign is a sudden shift in wind direction, especially in the evening hours, which often signals outflow, winds racing ahead of a developing storm. A wall of dust appearing on the horizon is another unmistakable signal that conditions are about to change fast. Darkening skies over the mountains east of the valley, even while the strip itself still sits under clear skies, can mean a storm is building nearby. It could reach the valley within the hour. Officials also stress a few practical precautions during this transition period specifically. Never drive through a flooded roadway, even one that looks shallow, since southern Nevada's washes and underpasses can fill with fast-moving water in minutes. Avoid open exposed areas like golf courses, parking lots, and hiking trails the moment thunder is heard, since lightning frequently strikes well ahead of the heaviest rain. And keep an eye on official flash flood warnings rather than relying on how the sky looks directly overhead, since storms building over distant mountains can send flash floods into the valley long after the rain itself has stopped falling there. There's also a very real toll building on the human body throughout this entire cycle. Days of extreme heat leave people dehydrated and physically stressed well before any storm arrives, often without them even realizing how depleted their bodies have become. That means the same vulnerable groups struggling through the heat, older residents, outdoor workers, and anyone without reliable air conditioning are often still weakened exactly when sudden storms, power outages, or flash flooding hit during the collapse phase that follows. Health officials continue to encourage residents to check on elderly neighbors throughout this entire stretch, not just during the hottest afternoons, but through any sudden weather shifts that follow. The bigger picture here is one meteorologists keep repeating summer after summer, especially in fast-growing desert cities like Las Vegas. A heat wave is not a single, isolated threat that ends the moment temperatures start to fall. It is often the first half of a two-part event, with the second half arriving suddenly, sometimes violently, once the pattern finally breaks. Ignoring that second half, simply because the temperature has dropped, is exactly the mistake officials are trying to prevent this summer. Before you go, if you want to stay ahead of this pattern as it continues to develop across the Southwest, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because we'll be tracking exactly how this heat and storm cycle plays out in the weeks ahead. Las Vegas is currently sitting inside one of the most volatile weather patterns the region sees all year. Extreme heat building on one side, monsoon moisture loading up on the other. The heat is getting all the attention, right now. What happens when that pattern finally breaks is the part almost nobody is watching closely enough. Keep an eye on how local forecasts describe the coming days, not just the temperature numbers themselves. Phrases like flash flood watch, outflow winds, or monsoon surge, appearing right alongside talk of the heat finally easing, are the clearest signal available that the danger has not actually passed. It has simply shifted from something you feel every afternoon to something that can arrive in a matter of minutes, with far less warning than the heat ever gave.